Hey, welcome back to the Girl Be Free podcast. I'm your host, Siobhan, your community cultivator and founder of Be Free Project. I help women who are ready to flourish, feel fulfilled, and be free to show up for themselves. I am deeply passionate about community, sisterhood, and personal growth. So if that's your jam, keep on listening. And now let's get into the show. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Girl Be Free podcast. I am back with another Chasing Free feature, and today I get to interview my friend GG Renee. She's a writer and speaker who helps others find, accept, and express their truths through writing. She brings her experience as a blogger, a memoirist, ghostwriter, and creative coach to the books, courses, and workshops she offers on her website, allthemanylayers.com. Through her offering, she advocates for self-discovery and emotional awareness through writing, as she creates safe spaces for others to own their voices and tell their stories. When she's not working on her own writing projects, Gigi freelances as a communications consultant and workshop facilitator for corporate and nonprofit clients. She lives in Maryland with her partner and 3 children and can be found on Instagram at GG Renee Writes. Of course, I will link that in the show notes. Gigi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Siobhan. Thank you so much for having me today. It's always a joy to chat with you.
Oh my
Always.
gosh, I'm so excited. Like, I was so excited for this interview because we always have such great conversations. So I'm like,
Yeah.
yep, we can just get on here and chit chat and
Right.
share how our conversations go, like offline. So I want to kick it off with, how's your heart today? Like, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good actually today. And while we all are going through a difficult time to some extent and having difficult moments at times, I take it moment to moment, or even sometimes like segment to segment. Like I knew I had to get up this morning and I had to go out. So it was like, okay, there's like a new kind of preparation for that wasn't before. So I'm just rolling with it and focusing on, okay, what do I know I need to do, and what do I need to do to put myself in a positive place for that thing I need to do, right? So my heart is good. I was looking forward to this conversation, and I'm just filling my days with things that make me feel good. And so that's keeping me buoyant, like even if I have a moment where something bothers me or my mind starts trailing in a direction that's not good, I'm filling my time and my surroundings with things that bring me right back up, whether that's taking a walk, playing with my kids for a little bit, whatever it is. So I'm feeling really good.
I love that, especially where the state of our country is right now with this pandemic, like
Right.
finding the things that make you feel good versus focusing on the negative. I think that's the only way we're going to get through this,
Yes.
like really, because we have control over it.
Right.
And when you consume yourself with all of that negativity, of course you're going to feel down. So focusing on the good is actually really, really beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what inspired you to begin creating the life you want and choosing to live a life that feels good to you?
I was inspired by the people that I saw around me that were living lifestyles that looked free to me. So, for example, when I was in my mid to late 20s, just kind of figuring it out, I was, freshly out of college, freshly a mom. All those 20 years, you're just doing a lot of figuring out. And I was doing all the things that I felt that I was supposed to do, that I was expected to do. And I was checking the boxes, and I was just trying to, create a good life. And I wondered why I still felt so unfulfilled. And I felt guilty for feeling unfulfilled, because I was like, I'm so blessed. There's really nothing wrong, but I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm not good enough at any of these things I'm doing, like all these disconnects. And eventually, from just talking to people and confiding in people about it, I heard enough that, like, maybe you should try therapy. They can help you sort of figure out where the disconnects are, and why your life doesn't match up with how you feel inside. And that was the best advice I could have ever gotten, because that really started my self-discovery journey in my late 20s, which led to me looking at my family life differently, like my whole lifestyle, my career, everything, for what was I doing that I thought was the thing I was supposed to do, and what was I doing that I really wanted to do.
Yes.
That I felt like, and there, that started that whole journey of figuring out, okay, I know these things that make me feel good. Why do I feel like those things don't matter, or aren't good enough, or I won't be able to live off of those things, or that when people see this in me, I'll be rejected or, seen differently. I cared a lot about appearances and all of that. So it just started with me feeling unsatisfied and trying to figure out why.
That's so good. And that's amazing that someone recommended therapy in your 20s.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Like,
God.
yeah, because I didn't get the message into my early 30s. And like you, I was in this space of feeling like something. Yes, I have all the things. I have the husband, the kids, the job, all the things that they say this should make you happy, but yet feeling like it wasn't good enough. And feeling a void and an emptiness, and then feeling bad that I even feel this way because I'm supposed to be happy.
Right.
And it's crazy that our minds go that way. So thank God for therapy for me as well, because it really shifted everything for me. Yeah.
Definitely.
So tell me, what was happening in your life when you knew you had to change it for the better? Like, was there a specific situation or something that was occurring where you're like, okay, something has to give?
It was the fact that I was wearing a mask and I was getting exhausted from it. Like, it started affecting my mental health. Like, and I didn't realize it though. When you're in the midst of it and you think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and what it is, Siobhan, is many of us are focused on the external. If I fix what's going on outside of me, then I'll feel happier. I'll feel at peace. I'll feel fulfilled. So I was trying to get my partner to act right. I was trying to get my kids to be perfect and really to be like me, like like trying to mold everything to be the way I thought it should be. I was trying to measure up to what I thought other people wanted, and I thought if I could fix those things, and I would try to go about fixing those things in ways that were dysfunctional, whether it was making emotional money decisions, overspending, telling little white lies to cover up little, mistakes that I made. I didn't want anybody to know, or problems in my relationship, or things that were normal things. It's just life, right? But like, you just get so busy trying to hide all of that. You get exhausted, overwhelmed. You're just not being true to yourself, and you're holding so much back. Eventually that emotional distress is going to weigh on you. So digestion problems, anxiety, like just everything starts to tell you like, okay, if I was living my life right, would I be feeling like all of this going on? And you have to start being honest with yourself, because you get so used to telling everybody, putting on the smiles for events and putting on that brave face for everybody. And it's just like, for what? Like, it just wears you down after a while, So I knew that this is not how you're supposed to feel. So all the fear that I had of digging up what needed to be dug up, eventually my fear of not digging those things up and what could happen became worse, because your thoughts get darker. Things start falling apart eventually. So that's what happened with me. Yeah.
And that is so true. And so many people, and I'm guilty of it, I wore a mask for many years, and you would have never known the pain that I was carrying, because we know how to look cute. We know how to dress it up and make it so everything is perfect. And we know how to tell those little white lies to make people believe that life is perfect. But in all actuality, everybody is going through something, and we're only hurting ourselves when we wear these masks and we are not our authentic selves, and we tell these little white lies, because those white lies become bigger lies, and it's crazy that we live these lives of just being unhappy.
Yeah. And thinking that's the norm. And I learned through my journey that part of that was like just sort of passed down to me, because historically, generationally, being unhappy, it wasn't called that. It was called being strong. It was called not making a fuss, right? And it was called doing what you have to do to survive. It was like being in survival mode. And that was so passed down to me. It was just like, this is what you do. Like, you don't make a big fuss. You don't complain. And unlearning that mentality, has to start from at least admitting that that's something that you want to stop that cycle with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you decide that, and even for me, once I decided I wanted to stop that cycle, it's almost like I was so hungry to learn more about it and absorb it, but not quite to the point yet where I was putting it in action in every way, right? So we have to be patient with ourselves because it takes a while. Sometimes you have like this light bulb moment and you're like, oh, I'm like on such a good path now. I'm learning all these new things. And then you get disappointed when you're with yourself because you're like, well, why hasn't this changed yet? And why am I still reacting this way to this? And it's like, it takes some time because, that intellectual knowledge can be very stimulating at first. And for me personally, it took years of just realizing that I can't just learn something and be like, oh, got it,
Yep, exactly.
and then go off into the world and expect my behavior to immediately change and my habits to immediately change. It's that day to day, and that's like the key to it all. I think is that day to day, just like those baby steps, and like, how are you putting the changes and the things you're discovering about yourself actually into action and making different decisions, right? And taking different actions. So.
Oh, that is all so good. And I think one of the things that kind of stand out for me, like we have to do this work because we have children.
Yes.
And there's no way that we would want to pass down these generational curses or trauma to our children. Otherwise, they're going to repeat these behaviors and they're going to be doing the work that we should have done.
Yep.
And that is what motivates me. When I look at my two children, I'm like, oh, no, we got to keep learning and growing because y'all are not taking my pain with you. You will have your own pain that you have to work through, but you ain't taking mine. And so I would hope that when people listen to this podcast or this episode in particular, that you realize it just takes little bitty steps. And it is a process to unlearning. And you have to be patient. Like you have to give yourself grace. You can't just snap a button or your fingers or whatever and be like, oh, I read this in a book today. Tomorrow, here comes a change.
Right.
Nah.
Yeah. It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. It's like you exercise your body. You don't expect to go to the gym one day and your whole body has changed, right? You have to keep going, and it hurts at first and you're sore and, all of that. And you want to skip a day. Like I discovered that I feel like my journey happened in waves. Like I got really high when I discovered that, particularly through writing, that I could kind of find a way to express and share and be productive, like with all these things I was learning about life, and I could give back with it, and I could build community and sisterhood and all these beautiful things. And I felt so inspired by that I just wanted to hit the ground running, which is good because you got to take action, right? But I was like so intent on that I wasn't continuing to fill my cup, right? It was just like, I learned a few things. Let me go and like talk about it instead of saying like, okay, but every day I got to keep learning. I got to keep recharging. I got to keep, growing. And that's where for a while then I kind of started to decline a little bit. And plus there was just life things going on. So it's a cyclical thing, and you're going to take hits along the way, and you just can't get discouraged. And you have to keep coming back to like, what helps me is what got me started in the first place. And a lot of times for me, it's reading. I'll go back to a book or I'll find a new book I get a lot of ideas and inspiration and just energy from reading people's stories and, ideas and things like that about like how to live a better life. And also like content, like videos, like we live in we just have so much access. There's like so many free resources. Like you don't need to have a personal, I never had a personal, other than therapy, I never had a personal coach or anything like that, a life coach, even though at times I wanted one. I would always say okay, resources aren't there for that right now. So how can I be my own life coach? Right. So I'm a big advocate for people going to therapy. Once you feel like, you like, for me it was like structure, discipline, these things like that, maybe I should get a coach. Not having the resources for that, I was like, okay, how can I do this myself? Because what is the book Marie Forleo just put out, Everything is Figureoutable?
Yes.
Just that. Have
you read
concept,
that yet?
I haven't read it yet.
It's on my list. It's on my list too.
Because I love her work.
Yes, me too.
And that's a quote that she's said for a long time, and it's like, it's so true. Like I really used to be one of those people who'd be like, well, I don't know how to do that. And just kind of sit there. And this journey, just the drive I got from it, taught me like, the more I like the resources are there, the more I get that out of my head that everything is figure outable. I can figure out a way. There's like no limit. So yeah, I kind of forgot like where I was going with that, what the initial
No,
question was.
it was good because it actually led into my next
Okay.
question, which you've already answered, because I wanted to know like specifically like what tool did you use for your personal growth journey? Like, and you already mentioned books and therapy, so you basically
Yeah.
answered that question.
Mhm.
Because sometimes people don't know where to start. And
Yeah.
so for you and I, therapy was number one, and then it's the books, and then it's the resources, podcasts, like all of the things.
Yes,
And
video, podcast.
yes,
There's so much out there.
so much. And I would
Mhm.
love for people to take advantage of that. And yes, coaching is great. Like I worked with the coach all last year,
Mhm.
totally game changer for me. But everyone doesn't have the resources to do that, and that's totally
Right.
fine. So you can read a book and, like you said,
Yes.
coach yourself until you're able
Yes.
to get that support,
Yes.
versus being
Yeah.
stuck and doing nothing.
Yes, there's always a solution. So when you know you're having that feeling of like when you hit that wall, that old wall, that we all have a point where we're tired or we're overwhelmed or something, and we hit that wall that says like, well, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to go from here. It's okay. Take a nap, step away from it for a little bit. You got to raise your vibration so that those solutions are just right there. It happens to me every time now. Now that I've shifted from thinking I have to forcibly figure everything out in the moment when I'm in distress. Like I'm expecting myself to figure things out when I'm upset, or when things aren't going. And it's like, you know what? It started with little baby things like, okay, I'm just going to let this go. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to, I'm going to pray on it, meditate on it, kind of put it out there. Like, this is something I need some help. I don't know what to do. And just kind of let go. Something little, right?
Yep.
And then if you try that, whatever your foundation is, whatever your spirituality is, it doesn't matter. This is just a human life, the way the universe works kind of thing. Just let it go. Give it up and just see what happens. Because even if it doesn't go the way you want, even if there is some discomfort with it, it always ends up being something that you needed, something that you grew from, that could end up in a blessing that you could never have imagined for yourself.
Exactly. Yep.
I really feel like that happens every time.
I'm with you. I get it too all the time. It's like, oh, this is exactly what I needed at this
could not have
very moment.
orchestrated this.
No, absolutely not. Not at all. And the way, like, I had a podcast episode that I just released, and I caught it from Rise to Reiki, because I went to the Rise conference in Toronto, had a Reiki session, totally transformed my life. And now I am having such rapid growth. Every day there's a new revelation. And I'm like, who is this new woman? Like, where did you come from? And it's things that are bothering me, but my perspective has changed. Even so much so, like, I was very guilty of responding and reacting too quickly, and not thinking things through, like you just said. And now I'm like, nope. I'm going to sit with this for as long as it takes. I'm going to sit in my feelings. And when I feel like, oh, I got the lesson or the level of clarity, then I will move forward. It is so refreshing.
It's life-changing.
It is life-changing.
You can just relax, you can just relax.
Yeah.
And then your efforts that you do put out are like from the right place. When you do make effort, I feel like, I've read that and heard that comment with this, with that sort of mindset before, like, detractors will say, well, you can't just sit around, you got faith without works is and all that. And I'm like, it's all about how you interpret it though. Nobody's saying that you don't work hard or that you don't take action. Absolutely, nobody's saying that. It's like you have to do it from the right energy.
Yes.
Do it from the right spirit in the right place. That's it. That's it.
And when I tell you I'm so into energy, like I've been in it for a while, but like I'm really like leaning more into that and trusting that whisper that we all have. Ooh, it's a game changer. It's such a game changer.
Absolutely.
So tell me, how do you show up for yourself and do the work? And then what does the work look like for you?
The big game changer for me was 2018 and 2019, really establishing a self-care routine for myself. Like not just saying, I'm going to create a blog post of these things you can do to create, to take care of yourself, but not doing the things myself. That's what I used to do. Full disclosure, like I loved collecting the ideas and packaging them up and offering them up to other people and being a source of inspiration for other people. I wasn't doing those things, Siobhan. I was like, waking up in the morning, getting right on the computer, trying to write brilliant things, like worried more about that, like proving myself or putting in the work, intentions in the right place, but not realizing that that's not how this works though.
Nope.
So if you're not taking care of yourself, like you're making this so much harder than it needs to be.
Yes.
So I started coming from a place of, my dad had passed in 2017. 2016 and 2017 were rough for me emotionally. 2018, started getting a little bit better. I started getting, like, you said, the little whisper, little things were kind of coming back. My aunt had given me some things to read and some videos to look at, and I had kind of said, okay, and I had kind of set them to the side, but when I was ready, I started watching them. It helped a lot. It was just some content by, like, Wayne Dyer, Esther Hicks.
Oh, yes.
Like, just very comforting, life-affirming. I read Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav. I reread Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And these things were really comforting to me. And I just said, I'm just going to take it easy. And based on all of that reading, it started off with waking up in the morning and reading. Then it was waking up in the morning and walking. And I think that's what really started to shift. Like, I was in a very rough place circumstantially.
Yeah.
But when I was out walking every morning, like, that's where I just kind of made peace with it all. And I just said, I give it all up.
Yes.
Like, I'm just going to give it all up. I'm just going to come on here and I'm going to walk it out. I would have my inspirational, something going on in my ears. And doing that every day, you start to feel physically better. You start to feel emotionally better. That morning routine of reading something inspirational, walking, it didn't matter. Like, the only time I would skip it is if I really, like, had something going on that, like, I'm about to be late for a commitment.
Yes.
I really had to have a good reason. Like, if it was the weather is not a good enough excuse.
And I was thinking, I was just about to ask, are you walking in the snow? That's immediately what I wanted to ask.
That first year I was, like, 2018, I was walking, it didn't matter. Now, this past winter, even though we didn't have much of a winter.
Yeah, ours is mild too.
Yeah, I had gotten to the point where I had the discipline to do something for myself inside. Yes. That's the only reason I allowed myself, because I knew that I needed to keep that going. But that morning routine and meditation, let me not get caught up in my words and forget about that. Learning how to meditate, something that I had tried a little bit here and there, 2-3 minutes here and there, but I was just so focused on doing it right that I couldn't even allow myself to have the experience. But really cultivating that was a game changer too. So you asked me, how do I show up for myself? I would definitely say that morning routine, for self-care routine in general. For me, it was morning time, because I work from home, my kids go to school. So I have a little pocket right after I take them that I can use just for me. And it's only like 5-6 hours they're at school. So I used to say, I need all that time for working. I don't have time to do all this, but I'm more productive with less time if I've done that. Like, I'd rather take the less amount of time and have that done, because I will be aligned and I'll be in the place I need to be to do good work. So
I love that. And the reason that I ask that question is because it comes up often, like, well, what is the work? What do you have to do? And everyone that I have on a podcast, their answer is different. And the resources that they offer is free. It's nothing like this, I need to go travel the world. Like,
it's nothing complicated.
Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love. No, you get to meditate. You get to go outside and walk. You get to read books. And yes, it may take some getting used to, but every single day, if you're consistent and intentional, you will start to see a shift. You will.
And it's sustainable. Sometimes we want something really sudden. We want it overnight. We want something like just immediate. And if we don't, we just kind of lose. And realizing that that's kind of just a life hack period for anything, for just fulfillment in your life period. If you find that happy, genuine, content, inspired place inside, regardless of, just from this routine that you have, then anything else that happens or that goes on is a bonus. It's just like a natural flow from that, So I remember reading it, and one of the things that I saw going around after Kobe Bryant passed, it was like a letter to one of his daughters, or it was something where he just said, when you begin to realize that, like, doing the work when you're tired, when you don't feel like it, that, putting in that consistency and all that, when you realize that that's the goal, that that's the win, then you're set, you're good. You know what I mean? Because anything you do from that place, like abundance is going to flow from that.
Yes.
You know, great experiences are going to flow from that. Like that's where the success is, not the, you know, physical reward or the money in the bank. Like all of that is wonderful. That's going to come. But if you try to like focus on those things, you've got it like backwards, and you're going to work way harder, and it's just not going to be as fulfilling for you. And it's going to be hard to sustain it. You know?
I agree. It's the consistency of showing up even when you don't feel like it.
Right.
Period.
Like, you can do that.
You in there like swimwear. You are, because, and
that's
I think
the hard part.
And that's one of the things I get complimented on the most. Like, how are you so consistent?
Yeah.
I know my purpose. I know what I'm here to do. And I don't have time to waste, because we can't get this time back. Like when you think about Kobe Bryant was here for what, 41 years?
Yeah.
And the impact that he made in that time period, but we still have life and breath inside of us, and we're going to waste it being on what, God knows what?
Right.
No, life is too short for that. So tell me, what is your greatest fear, and how do you overcome your fears?
You know, my greatest fear is hard to put into words because, like I've mentioned before, I'm someone who has struggled with anxiety and intrusive thoughts, and just, you know, I wouldn't even want to put it voice to anything that, you know. I would say in general, though, the best answer to that question for me is not being able to control my fear is probably my biggest fear, right? Like not being able to control it, not being able to understand and work with my emotions. So I think that overcoming it is that's the answer, is you learn what your emotions mean. Like when you feel fear in your body, when you feel that reaction, first it's just that first step is feeling it, right? Because we're so used to like, we almost feel and react to it simultaneously. So when you can slow yourself down and start to just feel it without reacting, that's like the first step. Feel it, and then just translate it differently. What is it? What is that? What is that trying to tell me? Am I really in danger? Am I really being threatened? Do I really need, you know, and just taking that moment is how you begin to overcome it, because our emotions are there to guide us and to tell us something, but we just often react to it from a place of just habit and like reflex. Like when we feel threatened so often when we don't need to, we give up a lot of energy to that, you know, just with little things. And it's just like we said earlier, another thing that we can unlearn, you know. So for someone like me, who, or anybody who's listening, who, you know, struggles with anxious thoughts, or like just thought patterns and spirals that they feel like I can't control it, you know what I mean? It just happens. I get that. I feel that on a very like real life level, and I'm here to tell you, you can change that. It's just like physical exercise, it's mental exercise. Meditation helps significantly. You just gotta be meditation. You gotta be patient with it. Like it's just like people say, well, I don't want to do yoga because I'm not flexible, or it hurts and this and that, and I'm like, but you're expecting too much just to try it out. Just like don't expect too much. Like if you can just sit still and close your eyes and breathe for 2 minutes, you know, to start, and just, even if you have thoughts, like just kind of observe them and just practice stillness. Eventually you will find like your mind becomes, you're able to get to that calm place easier and easier, and calm your thoughts, redirect your thoughts easier and easier. It's that day-to-day patience though. Like, okay, this is not just something I'm doing to fix the immediate problem. This is something I'm doing to like change my life and the way I deal with things. So it's not going to happen overnight or in a week or 2 weeks.
And it sounds like what I hear is that you're practicing mindfulness around your fear.
Yes, that's perfect.
That's what it sounds like.
That's exactly what it is.
And I was just listening to this episode. Jay Shetty has a podcast, and he did an interview with Jada Pinkett Smith. Did you hear that?
I did not hear it, no.
Such a great episode.
Okay.
And one of the things, I forgot what was the question, but she said every day she sits in solitude, whether it's for a few minutes or a few hours. And she just listens and just sits. And she may have a question to start out with, but if something is bothering her or whatever, she puts it out there, like you said, and then just sits with it. And I'm like, that is so beautiful. And so I've been trying to practice a little. Now, I'm not sitting for hours yet. But even if it's just for a few minutes, to just be in complete silence, because our lives are so busy and they're so noisy, and we don't realize or appreciate the value or beauty in silence.
Yep.
To sit
Many
still.
of us are uncomfortable with it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're uncomfortable with it because what kind of thoughts are going to come up? What's going to, it
Mm-hmm.
might be like, I might come out of it feeling worse, like all these fears, but the goal is to realize that like your inner world is not supposed to be something you want to run away from, and like you said, with everything that's going on right now, I have more opportunities where I can, several times a day, just say, you know what, my thoughts are mine's starting to get kind of busy, getting a little overwhelmed. Let me just take a minute, and just calm it down. A lot of us don't give ourselves permission to do that because we feel like we have to keep
going.
We have to keep going, stay on schedule, satisfy this, answer every phone call. You got to say no to some things.
Yes.
You got to carve out little pockets of space for yourself to like kind of regroup throughout the day, like, and give yourself permission to do that, and communicate that with the people that you live with, interact with, work with, like, boundaries, right?
Yep. Yep. So how do you want to be remembered? Like, what do you want people to say when you are not in the room?
What I love, this one is easy for me because one thing that got me on the right track in life was when I started thinking about, I think it was a book I read called The Firestarter Sessions by Danielle LaPorte.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And one of the questions on her little worksheets was like, what do people say about you? Or what do you love? Do you feel good when people say about you? And I said, I love when people say like, I just feel good when I'm around you. I feel uplifted. Or when people say that they appreciate my honesty and vulnerability, that like, I don't really try to, it makes some people uncomfortable, but I find more the people that become my people are the ones that say, I like that. I like that. Like, that not afraid to have an open heart and be a kind person and be an honest person and try to uplift other people. So the way I want to be remembered is that I'm somebody that when you're around them, you feel comfortable, you feel like you can be yourself, and that you feel like you can be your higher self, that you can, be. So many of us feel like we have to have this like tough shell, and I think it came from, as a child, I always felt like I needed to make people feel comfortable because I lived in a situation where my mother was suffering from a mental illness, and she would do a lot of eccentric things, a lot of unexplainable things. So I developed this little woman habit of just kind of cleaning up messes and making sure people felt comfortable, or if she was rude to someone, like part of it is probably just being very extra empathic too. I could just feel people discomfort and wanting to fix that. So I feel like if people remember me for being a source of joy and a source of light, that would be a fulfilling life for me.
That is so beautiful. And as you were talking, I was thinking how we connected years ago was through your writing. And when I would read your posts, I'm like, is GG speaking to me? Like, has she been in my journal? What is going on? And everything that you posted, like in your written word, I'm like, this is so beautiful. Like, that's what I kept feeling in my spirit. Like, your words are very authentic. They're vulnerable. They're honest.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, let me wait till she posts the next thing and the next thing. But your words are beautiful. And then another thing that I wanted to say is that as it relates to people, like, I'm building this beautiful relationship with someone and she feels like home. Feels like home. And I'm like, that's how I want all of my friendships to feel.
Yes.
Like, you know how you walk into your house and you're like, whoa, that was a hard day out there, but I am home. You feel comfortable, and then you're allowed to be yourself unapologetically, and you're around people who make space for you. That's such a beautiful feeling.
Yeah. And we shouldn't like think that it needs to be anything less than that. Right? Like,
we deserve that. We deserve it.
Yeah,
I love that. So what's the most important thing that you have learned about yourself over the last year?
I think over the last year has been trusting my intuition. Seeing how much my emotional decision making was affecting certain things in my life, and feeling empowered now, like, oh, I see now. I see what the disconnect was there, because I was making this decision from a place of fear, or I was, or insecurity in those decisions that I mean, no wonder it turned out that way, because that's where it was coming from. So just being able to self-correct better, not based on, again, like we were talking about earlier, like having something go wrong and trying to hurry up and fix it, but coming from a place of just true, like, I really don't have to fix anything, right? Like I can just kind of sit back and be as honest as possible on this journey, and these ideas are going to come to me, and things are going to be revealed without me having to force it. So this year has just been trusting that little whisper, doing the things that quiet everything else so that I can hear it, and putting those things into practice. That's what this year has really been, because the year before was just kind of like trying to quiet everything. And that takes a while, and then after a while it's like, okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this. Like now what do I feel inspired to do with it?
Yeah, I love that. And I've been talking about the whisper and the Be Free Inner Circle. I've been talking about it a little bit here on the podcast, and it starts off so quiet. And then it'll tell you to do something simple, like pick up your keys off the table and take that piece of paper with you. If you ignore it, 9 times out of 10, wherever you're going, you needed what you forgot at home, right? And I think Spirit wants to to see if you're going to be obedient with the little things, so that when other things arise, the voice gets louder. And that is what I'm seeing. Like the whisper, it started out like you could barely hear it, and now it's like I can hear it so clearly, and I'm honoring it. Like, and thank you for sharing that with me, and that is how I'm moving. And it's such a beautiful thing, because Oprah talks about it all the time. And when she was first talking, I'm like, what is she saying? And people focus on the negative part, right? So they focus on the negative, but no, that whisper will guide you through life, and it's so beautiful when you pay attention and you're obedient to it.
I get that question a lot, like, well, how do you tell the difference between the voice of fear or self-talk, like overthinking, and the voice of intuition? And everybody's different, but for me, it's a matter of just for a while, just observing and not judging at all, just observing, right? So that you can kind of start to differentiate, like, okay, after a while of observing this, I can see that the voice of fear is more like absolutes. Like, it comes from a place of all or nothing, or extreme, like extremity. It's like there's no it comes from a place of like not abundance, like the opposite, like the opposite. It's like limitation, right? Whereas for me, like the voice of abundance always comes from like a place of optimism and possibility, and no limitation, and just start to feel the texture of that. So I mean, a really practical example would be sometimes, like with my anxiety, it would come down to little things, like the voice would say, well, I need to run to the store. And the voice of anxiety would say, well, it's raining and it's dark. It's scary outside. Like, don't go right now. And it's like, I need some milk. I need to go to the store. There's no imminent danger. Like, there's no rational reason for me to say, there's no extreme situation going on to say, don't go to the store. But the old me would have really let that little voice literally talk me out of going to the store, because I'm like, well, maybe that was the voice of intuition saying you're going to get in a car accident. Like literally. And when you're going around loops of thought like that in your head, how can you be in the best place for yourself, for your family, for anything? When you're like, oh, should I, literally, like you can, that's where I was. Like, I was scared to make any decision because it might be the wrong decision. And so you have to have that understanding that the voice of intuition, the voice of love, the voice of possibility is not going to feel scary. It's going to be like, you have these resources, you have this car in this grocery store right there. Go get what you need.
I think it's also a discernment that you have to have, And for me, as I'm listening to your answer, I'm thinking, okay, for me, it's energy. It's connection.
That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. And so when I'm in a situation where I'm like, well, what is this? I talk it out. I work really well with talking things out with people that I trust and that make space for me. And so oftentimes when I say something with a specific person, she's like, well, why do you think that? And it's always a why. You keep asking the why till you get to the center of it. And you're like, oh, this is stemming from childhood because something happened,
I love that.
And so I think that could be really helpful when you're trying to decipher between the positive voice and the negative voice, if you will.
For
Why are you having
sure.
this thought? And then journal about it, right? Because
Yes.
and I'm sure that's probably how both of us,
Mm-hmm.
connect, is like
That's
through
key.
writing,
Mm-hmm.
And if writing is not your thing, maybe you record yourself talking it through
Yep.
until you can figure out, like, okay, where is this coming from? So then that will guide you on how to move forward.
Absolutely. And it's such a magical process when you find yourself spontaneously saying something or writing something that you didn't know you even felt that way, or that it just came out in a way that you're just like, oh, and it clarifies something. It
Yes.
reveals something that you can actually work with,
Mm-hmm.
instead of dealing with, writing puts it into form where when your emotions are just swirling around inside of you and you're just kind of reacting and it's just kind of all a ball. That's why we feel so relieved when we write down a list, because it's like you're
Yep.
putting into form like these things.
Yes.
Same thing with like when you're working through difficult feelings, like try to put it into words, like try to literally sit down, like you said, whether it's writing, speaking it, try to verbalize it. It really, really does help.
I agree. And one thing I realized recently is that, because when I was working with my coach, she would ask, like, well, how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, I didn't learn how to express my feelings. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a word for it. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I feel. And so now, like, I had a situation that just happened recently, and I'm like, I feel confused. I feel angry. I feel hurt. Like, I made a list, but it
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of work to be able to express how I feel because I didn't know. We
Yeah.
use happy and sad or happy and angry and leave it there. There's a whole plethora of emotions that we can feel. And I think that will also help guide you as it relates to hearing that voice. Like, what are you feeling emotionally and
Mm-hmm.
connecting with that, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's another reference for your listeners, Byron Katie.
Mm,
She has a process called the work,
okay.
and it's a series of 4 questions. I don't want to mess them up, so I won't repeat them right now. But it's completely, the 4 questions are free. It's all there on her website on byronkatie.com. But one of them is what you said is questioning, and that talking process where you say like, like one of the questions is something like, do I know this to be true? For sure. Like, is this a fact, like a real fact? And it's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
But girl, if that thing don't work, like yesterday, um, this is gonna sound so silly. I try to give practical examples because it really comes down to these practical things.
Mm-hmm.
But like my partner said something to me about how, me putting sugar in my cereal. And I was like, I don't even do that anymore. Like that's something I did
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when we were young. We've been together forever. But Siobhan, I was so annoyed because I
Right.
was like, like,
You
why
were
are people,
triggered. You got
I was
triggered.
triggered.
Yeah.
I'm like, because we've had this conversation
Mm-hmm.
before. Like, and I think of myself as this more health conscious person, and you
Mm-hmm.
still walk around here thinking I'm putting piles of sugar on my cereal. It was so silly,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So it just, even something silly like that, the work helps because it forces you to question, like, why am I in my feelings about this right now?
Yes,
Like, am
yes,
I really about to like throw off the whole vibe? Because for what?
yes, exactly.
It really helps, from small things like that to very big things,
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely recommend that as another way, just sort of to begin, what I shouldn't even say that, like, because it's for, and wherever you are in your journey, but
Mm-hmm.
if, looking for different ways to deepen your connection with yourself and your self-awareness, it helps a lot.
I love that. I'll list that link to the website in the show
Okay.
notes because I'm going to check that out too because I want to know what the other 3 questions are.
Yeah, you'll love it. You'll love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Okay. So, what are you most proud of?
I'm very proud of my kids, and that comes right to mind for me because you touched on it earlier. Like, I'm proud of them for who they are,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm proud of being their mom, like being chosen to be their mom, for having the experience. They inspired me, from the minute that I knew that I was becoming a mom. I was like, I gotta get myself together.
Right. That part. Yes. That. Yes.
I have
Absolutely.
got to get it together, and that has literally been every day. Every
Yeah.
day I got to get it together. I got to keep it together. I've got to be real with them. I've got to be, learning for them,
Mm.
all of that. And I know that there are many paths to that, and if I wasn't a mother, that it would still be, of course, a beautiful path. But for me personally, in my experience, like the whole experience of motherhood is just all inspiring to me. And I'm very proud of how they're growing into little whole people on their own, and that I just
Mhm.
get to be a part of that. is such a blessing. So.
Yeah. And also when you think about how you grew up, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
everything that, and when I say you, we,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything that you've had to overcome to get to this space of doing the work for your children. You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. It is definitely a blessing. And even just being um, a mother with getting to have an experience that my mother didn't particularly get to have at this
Come
point
on.
now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Right. And I know you
Yep.
know about that.
Yes.
That is huge to me. I'm like, I am living basically, I'm able to be present and coherent and just in a healthy place for my kids. So I remind myself that when I'm being hard on myself as a
Mm-hmm.
mom, or when I'm confused as a mom, and we have those moments because we're just figuring it out as we go.
Yep.
And then I'm like, you know what, I'm here, I'm healthy, I'm doing the best that I know how, I'm loving them as big as I can, and that's all I can do. And it's such a blessing to even get to do that, and just
Mm-hmm.
to even be in my right mind to do that and in good health to do that.
Yes.
A lot of moms don't get that. A lot of
Mm-mm.
kids don't get moms who are in that place.
Yes. Ooh, that's good. I'm gonna have to listen to that again because that is beautiful, especially because we have similar,
Mm-hmm.
issues as it relates to moms.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for the longest, I was very hard on myself because I wanted to be perfect
Yeah.
because of everything that I've seen growing up. And it's like,
Yeah.
you're just enough as you are.
Yep.
And it amazes me. My daughter is 14, and the conversations that we have, like, she's such a wise young girl. And
Oh.
I was telling her about a situation, and I'm very honest, I'm very vocal, like, she
Mm-hmm.
sees it all. And we were having a conversation today, and she said, I just love hearing you talk. I was like, I'm doing a great job. I'm a great mom. Because, and when you talked about earlier, like the life skills, or maybe we talked about that before we got on here or whatever, we're giving them life skills on how to be in relationship,
Yep.
how to show up in the world. And so when she sees me communicating with friends, whether I'm having a verbal conversation with her or she's just overhearing, because she's always listening,
Right.
nosy,
Always.
but she's learning.
Yeah.
And how I'm managing these things on all different levels. Like, I'm doing a great job, and I have to remind myself of that, because
You
sometimes
do.
I'm like, oh man, I dropped the ball here. It's like, nope, you're doing exactly what you're supposed
Yep.
to be doing, and she's getting it,
Mm-hmm.
or they're getting it,
They're absorbing it. They're watching. We're teaching them by example.
Yes, yep.
And they're getting it. And there's that time that's going to pass where we're going to see it showing up in
Yes.
the things they do, because the teenage years sometimes you're just like, is she getting it?
Hello, girl. And I should have texted you or called you, because about a month or two ago I was going through it, and I'm like, what's
Yeah.
happening? It's hard.
Girl, feel free, because my daughter's 14 too. So I
Yep.
know.
Thank you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so glad. And I don't know, you are already in my phone, so I will be reaching out, because I'm like, what is going on? She's better now, but we had a moment. I'm like, what is happening?
Absolutely. And there will be more, just because, she said, I remember being a teenage girl,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
just, so yeah.
It's different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this question that I'm about to ask has just been incorporated into my podcast, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and is very thought provoking. And because I'm all about community and sisterhood and really building these conscious friendships,
Mm-hmm.
I read this question in a book, and I'm like, I just have to ask. And so, did you thoughtfully choose your friends, or did you fall into relationship with them?
That is such an amazing question. And I would say that a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
My current friends that I've had for years, I would say I fell into those, because some of those friendships go back to childhood. And, when you're just friends with, well, even then there was probably some level of energy, where you see people that, like, looks like somebody I could be friends with. That looks like somebody. But the ones that fall off are the ones that, like, consciously you kind of like drift apart over the years, right? So I have a core set of like a handful of friends that even throughout the years, since, like, some of them are from middle school, high school, college, and that we're still very close knit. I have friends that have come and gone throughout the years, and I know that those friends were just for a season.
Yes.
And I've made peace with that. At first, I think when you first see that happening, you feel like, that loss in a
It's
heavy way.
heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, because you don't realize at the time. You just think, like, all these friends, like, because I think we also have that in common. Like, I'm a girl's girl. I love my female relationships. I've always, like, valued that as, like, my backbone. So losing a friendship or drifting apart is like, but even now I'm very, because of that journey, I would say I'm definitely on the conscious side now, because even some of those long-term friendships that have evolved to where maybe we don't talk all the time like we used to. And I would feel guilty, like I'm different now. I have my own family and I have these other things, and I can't call you every week, and I can't do these things. And if I can't have a positive, loving, supportive friendship with you in this new context, then I'm not going to feel guilty. I'm not going to worry about forcibly maintaining these things, because if it's not flowing naturally. Like the ones that really I think add to both sides of the relationship is when you can come together, come apart, and it's natural. There's no resentment, guilt, expectations that are, and if there are, like, you talk about it, you work your way through it. Like, I really could, I need this from you, and just learning how to communicate instead of harboring different resentments. Like, I really don't have patience for that in relationships. So
we get too old for that. We get too old. We ain't got time for that.
Yeah. So I'm definitely have to be conscious now, because I don't have the energy for, forcing relationships, forcing, that alignment if it's not there.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good question, because it really makes you reflect over your friendships and where you're at. And like I was saying to someone on another episode, is how you can see the people that you've outgrown, right?
Yes.
And how you need to shift things versus carrying around dead weight that no longer serves you. Yes. And so many times we fall into these relationships or friendships, if you will, like because we go to the same church or we go to the same school, and then life has changed so much where you've grown and they haven't grown, but yet you still holding on to them. That is not a good thing at all. And so now moving forward, every friend that's in my life, that's in my phone, I'm consciously choosing you. Yep. Otherwise, I don't have time for it, Right. And I think it's really good. You mentioned communication, that you have an open conversation with your friends. And I don't think enough of that is going on.
It's not.
It's not at all.
I've had over the years just friends that I thought we were all good, and they were harboring things, and, and it made me realize even then, like, well, do I do that? And it made me look at myself and make sure that I was not doing that in the relationships that, like, if this is a relationship that I value, that I want to continue to feed into, I can't bring that either, that, I'm going to hold this, because being, like I mentioned to you earlier, sometimes we want to people please, when you do love harmony, when you do see yourself as someone like who always wants to bring the energy up with people, sometimes you can take that too far and avoid conflict to the point where it hurts your relationships.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it's learning how do I deal with conflicts and communication issues when I don't like confrontation, or when I think that it's good, I'm so used to these things having to turn ugly. That's when you're like, okay, how can I work on myself so that I can communicate in a healthy, positive way? Things that, maybe we don't all have examples of how to do that, so we have to figure it out. Like my family, everybody got quiet and ignored each other for years and years. And then on my kid's dad's side, they fuss and fight a lot. So it's like, we don't want to bring either of those.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Because then your children will become adults and repeat the same habits.
Yeah.
And it's just a cycle. Versus healthy communication is like key. One of the things, I've been sharing this on all the episodes lately, is that I made a list of what I need from you as a friend. And it's a very long list. And I sent this text message to several of my friends, everybody, to certain specific people that I talk to more often. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to show up for you. This is how I expect for you to show up for me. Is there something we need to add to the list? Is it something, and so let's
something
have a conversation.
Disagree with? Let's talk
because
about it.
Otherwise you have these expectations in a friendship and you never had a conversation, but then things go sour and now you can't deal with the conflict. You don't know how to address each other because of you never had any boundaries. You never had anything on the table. So I had to do that late last year, like I believe in December. Game changer for me. Game changer.
That's like mature friendship. That's like
my friend was like, you on some 40-year-old stuff right there. I'm like, I am, but this is what it is. If we're gonna continue to engage, this is what I want to share, and this is how I need you to show up for me. So then that way we are all on the same page and there's no confusion, and we're consciously choosing each other. So tell me, how important is community and sisterhood in the work that you do?
Oh, it's crucial. It's everything. I mentioned earlier that I'm an introvert, and there's a part of me that could potentially isolate myself easily, right? And and think that, oh, I'm fine. This feels good. I prefer this. But deep down, whatever drives creators, artists, right, expressive people, I have that. And I can't, over the years I struggled with, I think Brene Brown refers to it as vulnerability hangovers, thinking like I've shared too much, I can't write anymore, I can't do this anymore. It's exhausting to be so vulnerable and open this way in my work and just in my relationships, and just be so open-hearted. And I realized that I actually just needed to get over, you have to do things in doses and things like that. I do need my time to recharge, but without that, the whole part of the fulfillment of it is missing. Like I could sit and write in my journal and not share with anyone and learn a lot about myself and just, do me. But there's something more in me that calls me to share and to reach out. So, and so far as sisterhood and my friendships, that's key. Like I said, that's like my backbone. And then in sisterhood and just community with writing and being creative, it's not that I can't, I just recognize that there are certain places, close friends, close family who love me and support me, but don't get half the stuff that I'm talking about.
Yep.
They're like, when's the book coming out? I'll go get it. Like, I'll come to you, like I support you, but they might not, So creating community around that is so that you can be a blessing to other people, so that you can feed off of that energy and be around people who speak your language and who match your, like I hear you talk about that a lot, like being around people who match your energy. Like you cannot underestimate the power of that.
Oh my gosh,
right?
no.
And it's just a magical thing. So I think that going from writing to doing workshops really brought that home for me, because writing was still very much an isolating. I would go into my little cocoon and I would write and hide behind my computer, and I liked that. But it was like when I got into a workshop environment, I was like, oh snap, like
you light up inside.
Yes. Yeah, I was like, I feel really like tuned into myself in a way that I've never, and I thought I didn't like, from working in corporate America, the types of presentations and things I had to do, it was always a lot of fear and nervousness around it. And I can never say that I liked it. Yep. But when I got into talking about a topic that I'm passionate about, right?
We can talk for hours.
For hours, and I could feel a connection to a perfect stranger, but who is with me energetically. So it's everything. And I love to create that environment to show people like, this, like you said earlier, like this magic is free. Like all we got to do energy out, and eventually it's going to lead you to attract other people, and you're going to bring it together. It happens naturally and organically if you allow it, if you don't get in the way of it.
That energy is everything. Like I am so on this vibration or whatever, and one of the things I was reading in this book recently is that you want to connect with people that you have a equal energy exchange with. I said, oh, that's so good. Like, and when you find that person or that community, it's almost like you're floating, like it's just such a good feeling. Like, where you been all my life? Like, how are you so energy connected? So much so that they understand, they get it. It goes back to feeling like home, like a safe space. That's the type of community and sisterhood, like that will feed your soul,
It does. It gives you that, that like, we need to find it within ourselves, but it also feels good to see it reflected back. So it just adds more validation. It adds more, like, just giving yourself permission. Like, if I can just continue to be more of myself and bring my full self every day, I'm going to keep attracting these things that match that. And it takes the form of people. It takes the form of opportunities and experiences, money. Like it takes whatever different forms you put your hands in. So community, like, I used to think of workshops as something to do to make money so that I could write. That's how I looked at it. Like my main thing, I want to be a writer.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing this for money to help me do that. And wow, did I realize that this is a whole other thing. It's connected to the writing for sure. It's a whole other gift that I have and that I love to do. So that was just like an unexpected blessing,
Yeah. And that's the same thing with me, like with the Be Free Inner Circle, having this virtual community. But when you get me in a room, I will light it up. I will light it up, GG. And we have never met in person, so we totally have to meet in person one day.
We
But
will.
you give me a mic, you give me a stage, you give me an audience. There's just something. It's almost like you're flicking on my light switch, and it's where I come alive. It's exactly where I come alive, and that's something that I'm going to be actually working more on, because that I feel like that's my heart soul work, and we have to do more of that.
Yeah,
that's what makes life magical and beautiful.
absolutely.
When you're doing the things that like lights you up inside,
That's what it's all about.
Yep. So what's one thing you would tell your 20-year-old self?
My 20-year-old self, I would say, pay less attention to what people think about you and do what feels good to you. I can even like picture my 20-year-old self, and I feel like that would go right over my head at that age. But 20, I was so overwhelmed and so cared so much about what other people thought. And it was crippling, at the time I didn't think it was, but it was very crippling. So I would just say, be yourself. Don't worry about what other people are thinking. But we all have to go through the different things we go through to get to those discoveries. Whenever they finally do come to our awareness, it's like,
I love that. That's a beautiful answer.
Mm-hmm.
What's one book that you would recommend the Girl Be Free listeners read?
So I already mentioned A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson and Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav. Another one that has been really helpful for me is, I'm trying to remember if it's it's right here. I'm just going to peek at it. A New Earth. Yeah. A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Okay.
It's one that's I don't find it to be particularly readable. It's, you know what I mean? Like it's readable, but it's one of those books where I'll read a little bit. I've never read it straight through. But girl, if I don't find exactly like something that I need, some little tidbit that helps me work through something every time I pick it up, his work is it's very simple. It's very understated. But if you can just if you are working on mindfulness, I guess like that's a theme throughout this for sure, is that mindfulness is something that for me is sort of underlying everything. It's just sort of quieting it all and getting down to the your inner being and the wellness of your inner being. His work really, really helps with that.
I'm going to have to get that. I've seen it, of course, but I don't own it. But I tried to listen to, because Oprah did a whole series or something on Super Soul Sunday. But I love like that you didn't read it all the way through, but every time you need it, you open it up to something. That's beautiful. So
yeah, it's just it's like a resource for me. So, and I would say that to your listeners, when it comes to books, and sometimes like, what I call like dense books, deep books like that, and you can read a little bit and then feel like, oh, I'm not getting this, or I'm not feeling this, and you give up. I would say that's fine. Just read a little bit and put it down for a little bit. Reflect on it. Like, don't feel like you got to read every book from front to back and you got to love it. Like, just take it easy with it and just, take those nuggets and let it be what it is for you. Right. Don't give up so easy, because your resistance is going to rise up, and you just have to expect that and work around it.
Yep. So that goes back to trusting your intuition.
For sure.
So share a fun fact about yourself.
Oh, yeah. That's funny, because I thought about that earlier and I was like, I have to come back to that, because everything that came to my mind was so goofy and weird. A fun fact about myself is that, I don't know if this is a fun fact, but it's something that I'm working on and it has to do with fun. So I'm going to use this. My girlfriends always tell me that I come across way more serious in my work, like in my writing and my posts and stuff, than I am in real life. I'm very silly and jokey and irreverent at times, and just a lot more lighthearted in person. So I think a fun fact about myself is that for some reason, it's like, I don't know, it's like the alter ego thing. Like, when I'm in creative mode, I just go into this more like deep, like this place where everything that comes out of me is like from this alter, I guess it's from my inner being, but it's merging the two is something that I feel like sort of challenged to do. Like, okay, I see what they're talking about, and I do think that my fun side is an aspect that could really enrich my
Yeah.
work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it comes out, like you said, when you get on stage or when you get in
Oh,
front
yeah.
of a group, it comes out naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, in my writing, I think it's something I have to work at a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a nerdy answer, but
No, I like
because
it.
I'm because I'm such like a creative nerd,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's like an interesting thing that I'm just kind of, and I would challenge anybody to think about how you can bring more of yourself into what
Yes.
you do. Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
goofy or you're silly, or you have a sense of humor, or let's say your outer, you're more most of the time lead with your goofy side, but you have this deeper side. Like where you have an outlet for that at?
Mm-hmm.
Where does that
Mm-hmm.
part get a voice? So I would challenge y'all, like, because I'm something I'm working on for myself. Like,
I like that.
just bringing more of myself into everything. It really does just make life feel more full.
Mm-hmm. And you're being your full self, your full
Yes,
authentic self. And it's
yes,
not easy because when I think serious. Like,
yeah,
so when you say, and I was so ready for this answer, I'm like, I can't wait to see what she's going to tell us about a fun fact. Because I do see it's always deep and it's like, oh, you're
yeah,
poetic. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay. So I think that will be beautiful to incorporate the personal side of you outside of your work
yeah.
so that it merges together, and people can connect on both sides. Now I'm going to be curious to see how you do that.
I'm
I'll be
working on
watching.
it.
I'll be watching for sure. So my last and final question is, what does being free mean to you?
Being free is a concept that I think became clear to me when I started deciding how I really wanted my life to look. And it was this concept of creative living. I always thought, like, to live creatively, I just had this limited idea of what that means. You have to be this artist, and you have to, you know, be this, hippie sort of, mentality or lifestyle. And for me, it's just about the flexibility and looking at everything in my life as a creative decision. What career do I want to choose? That's a creative decision. Where do I want to live? That's a creative decision. How do I want to eat? Like, all of the freedom and flexibility to think for myself, like, what is it that I'm uniquely trying to align myself with? What is my purpose? What do I want to be, insofar as like changing my fitness and food and all of that. Like, no, I don't want to just eat what I'm used to eating, right? I want to be creative and think, like, what has life taught me? And how do I filter that through and creatively decide how I want to eat, how I want to cook, how I want to raise my kids, like all of that. Like, I don't have to stick to a status quo. I don't have to satisfy my, the judgmental eyes of anybody that I think is looking, and not have to worry about any of that. I get to decide for myself how I want to shape this life that I've been given. And that's creative living. So like when I talk to people about living creatively and they're like, well, I'm an accountant, or
Mm-hmm,
like, and
mm-hmm.
they think they take it very literally. And I'm like, being
Yes.
free to me is like, okay, so you're an accountant, right? But what else are you?
Yes.
Be free to be all of those parts of who you are, and to bring more of yourself into all of those pockets of what you do.
Yeah, like your fun side.
Yes.
Just like your fun side. Oh, that is such a beautiful answer, which I knew it would be coming from you. And I used to think too, like creatively, like, oh, I have to be an artist or I have to be a singer. It's like, no, no, no. You get to creatively show up and do
Yes.
your purpose every day. Purpose in motherhood, partnership, relationship, friendship, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
This was such a beautiful conversation that I knew we would have. So thank you, and I'm grateful for your time of spending with me today and like sharing your truth. And I know that the listeners are going to benefit so much from just hearing a different perspective on how they can chase free and how they can be free to live the life that they desire. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having
My
me.
pleasure. So please tell the audience where they can find you online and if you have anything exciting coming up that you need us to know about.
Definitely. You can find me online at allthemanylayers.com. And I'm on social media at GG Renee Wright. That's GGRENEE Wright, WRITES. I don't know why I'm spelling it, because I know Siobhan is going to provide
You already know, yes, but go ahead,
information.
but carry on.
But so that's my blog and social media. And I wrapped up, I did a new book project at the end of 2019. I wrapped up my first guided journal I did a self-discovery book called Writing the Layers. It's available on Amazon, but this one is a little bit different. This is my first experience with a publisher, so it was very exciting. I learned so much, and the book is coming out in May. It's called the Self-Care Check-In. And the alignment, girl, at the time that the opportunity came to me, the alignment was so perfect because, like I mentioned to you earlier, I was just in this high of like, wow, this is what self-care is. Self-care is not what I thought it was.
Yep.
So when the book pre-orders, I believe, will not be open until the end of April, mid to late April. But definitely, if you go to my website, allthemanylayers.com, or follow me on social media, I'll be posting a lot of updates so that you can get in there. And this book, I think I'm most proud of because I just put it all out there and felt because of the alignment with what was going on in my life, I just felt such passion around this message. Like, don't like overlook self-care and just think that it's like this trendy thing. It's easy to dismiss it these days because everybody's like using it. And even I, for a while, was like, I don't even want to say the word because everybody's, and I'm so contrary like that sometimes. Like, I don't even want to talk about it because everybody's using it. It's not a trend. It really is the answer to all of those disconnects we've talked about through this call. Self-care is what puts you back into that energetic place you need to be in to live a good life. And figuring out what that looks like for you is a unique process for everybody. But this journal I've created provides so many ideas, like research-based ideas on how different, and it's broken down into categories. So it's spirituality, it's creativity, it's career and education, all these aspects of your life, and how to develop a self-care mindset, not just little self-care little moments, but like a self-care mindset. So as you can see, I'm very excited about it.
I love it. I'm excited. I'm like, yes, all of it.
Yeah,
all of
so
it.
definitely
And that's
check
beautiful.
that out.
And that's so rich because I too get tired of seeing the self-care. And I did a whole episode about this, like the trendy, something about self-care and not being trendy, and like not the baths, retail therapy, getting your hair and nails done. That's great. What are you doing for mental, emotional, and physical health? You know? How are you taking care of yourself in that aspect versus all this stuff that is trending on social media? So I love
the
that
consumerism part of it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And I love that you created a whole book about it. So I will link, of course, all your things in the show notes, but even when the book comes out, sharing it with my community and with my audience, because we can all benefit from that. And teaching me about self-care on a spiritual level, career and education, I believe you said. And then what was the third one?
It was creativity, it's relationships, it's 6 total categories.
So
it tries to touch on, like, this is not just something you do here. This is something you do in every aspect of your life. Like, it's a way to live.
That's so necessary and so needed. So I cannot wait for your book to come out. I will be sharing it for sure. So thank you again so much for being on the show. And until next time, girl, be free. Hey, BFFs. I want to personally invite you to BeFreeInnerCircle.com, your community for real sisterhood where women are showing up and doing the work. Whether you're still trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, or you need accountability to keep pushing forward to reach your goals, the Be Free Inner Circle is the community for you. You can expect curated content that will support you on becoming the best version of yourself, live office hours and Q&A sessions where we chat about things like overcoming self-doubt, building your confidence, practicing self-care without guilt, and so much more. Virtual live events from book clubs and workshops with guest speakers, and a supportive and active community of women that will encourage you, hold you accountable, cheer you on, and give you honest feedback and advice. It's the perfect place to be for women who are ready to show up, flourish, and be free. Join today at BeFreeInnerCircle.com.